Despite at least 3.5 billion barrels in oil reserves, the economy is now completely crippled. A far cry from what was expected when the country gained its independence. Were you here on Independence Day?
Absolutely. I was here, and this place was filled up with people.
We are all South Sudanese. We may be a Zande, a Dinka, a Nuer.
This was the only time in our history where we came together despite our differences, whether they were tribal, whether they were political, whether they were economical. All kinds of people were here.
Remember, you are the South Sudanese first.
Just like a wedding night, when the honeymoon fades, the real problems, they kick in. And it was just a matter of 3 years, and the country erupted in war. December 15, 2013, there was a brewing power struggle between Salva Kiir Mayardit, the president of South Sudan.
I promise you today that justice will prevail.
And Riek Machar, the former first vice president.
President Salva Kiir has been corrupted by power.
And of course, at the center of power is oil, is money. It became a conflict along tribal lines. The Dinka, where the president comes from, and the NURFATIN, where the former first vice president comes from. And that engulfed the whole country.
With the country's two largest tribes divided by their loyalty to the president and the vice president, the world's newest country split along ethnic lines.
This is not the country we fought for. We were fighting for a future where there is peace, there is stability, there is prosperity. So indeed, people are upset about where we have found ourselves in the country.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Introduction of Sudan. Sudan is in the northeast of Africa. Including geographer and historian to archaeologists and ordinary tourists, it is a land of incredible diversity that amuse and excite many of its visitors. It is a diverse yet special country in terms of its climate, governance, ecology, language, society, religion, and ethnicity. According to current figures, Sudan has been expected to produce by this 2064 of 100 million individuals. There are 43.85 million individuals in the population at present and consistently expanding of 2.42% annually. This percentage contributes more than 1 million individuals annually to the inhabitants. In Sudan, there are well over 597 ethnic groups that speak over 400 languages and dialects. Sudan has been near exclusively Islamic, with many other people who speak Arabic Sudan. With 41% population under the age of 15, Sudan also has a number of young people. 20% of Sudanese people are 15 to 24 year age. 21% are 25 to 54 years old, and under 4% are 55 to 64 years old. There is only 3.3% of its demographic over 65 years old. Sudan average age of 18.9 years is also very low. In 2010, despite the country's rapid growth, Sudan related to international constraint was listed at 17 of quickest growing economy in world, largely caused by oil profit. However, the division of its south had a severe impact on the market in 2011 because more than 80% oil in Sudan were located in the southern region. The fall of oil income has resulted in a significant adjustment to fiscal situation of Sudan while has encouraged steps of budgetary severity. The ongoing conflict among South Sudan and Sudan of failing to accomplish a deal on transport charges for South Sudanese oil have further amplified the situation. The free trade rating of Sudan is 55.0, allowing it in the 2020 list at 173 place of unbound economy. Based on the large reduction ranking of fiscal health, the total score had also declined by 2.7 points, Sudan being ranked 44 from 47 countries in sub-Saharan of Africa region, and its performance level is far below the world and geographical standard. After its continuance from its index ranking in 2017, the Sudanese economy was being called restrained due to strong inflationary pressure and strong currency fluctuation that have softened private consumption and prevented investment. GDP has decreased. Sudan has been troubled by tension for much of its independence existence, making it virtually difficult to secure economic stability. Even if political stability were to be accomplished in the country, major reform would be needed to resolve the serious shortcoming of fiscal health, investment independence, and the three key aspects of the rule of law, property right, judicial efficiency, and government integrity. After the attraction of significant resource-seeking FDI from this countryside before the late 1990s, Sudan continues to promote relations with key partners in developing countries, in particular China, Malaysia, and India. In effort to expand agriculture sector and withstand the shock of decreasing oil revenues, the government seeks to work in strategic alliance with local and foreign private companies.
Hi, I will present about fiscal policy in Sudan. Sudan has undergone major economic shift in recent decades. The 1960s marked government engagement in business, while the self-approach marked development policy in the late 1970s. In the second half of the 1970s, after the aggressive development project developed in the early 1970s, economic issues assumed a crisis proportion. The stock market inability to increase job pool, a crisis. By the 1980s, early in the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, Sudan adopted macroeconomic stabilization and structural reform programs. Throughout 1978 until 1984, however, the economy faced a downturn, which witnessed very active change in the impact. During the decrease, production fell to a percentage of negative 1.7% per year. Macroeconomic policies turned sour to horrible. Inflation grew to more than 27% and inflationary tax began 62% of GDP. For perhaps the first time, seigneurial income exceeds more than 1% of maturity level, input patent incompetence in monetary policy. The reform emphasized successive steps of devolution and liberalization that transfer export from the official market to something like the free market. This change also led to Sudan emerging as a major Middle East oil supplies workers' country. Transferring from Sudanese to another country is much more about triple export authorized between 1983 and 1984. This policy encouraged government to reform currency unification to raise the money needed to fund economic reforms. Reformers are seeking remittance from Arab countries with large oil supply. This attempt failed and Sudanese national opted to use the parallel foreign exchange market, which provide a somewhat lower price. Economic fiscal output for 1978 to 1985 was poor. The total GDP shall stagnate at an average annual rate of 12%, with a growing share of GDP spending primarily due to the war in the south of the country. The economy also had significant budget deficit, external debt, and using international assistance to fill the deficit made the government more dependent on foreign aid. Money supply rose substantially, and the annual rate of monetary expansion reached roughly 40%. For about the same duration, inflation was 27%. They claim the domestic revenue to GDP ratio had risen over time, reaching nearly 12% by 1993. Revenue collection rose substantially as tax revenue grew from 122% of income to 214% of income in 1993. Total budget expenditure rose from 10% in 1992 to 70% in 1993. Despite this reform, the deficit remained high, mainly financed internally by central banks' loan. During the National Economic Salvation Program, or NESP, funding increased for food. Expenditure from 1990 to 1992 increased 44% from 31.6 billion in 1990 to 55.5 billion in 1992, and is expected to exceed 133 billion by 1995. Money supply increased by an average of 38% annually. High inflation triggered higher public wage spending. In the first half of the 1990s, a massive fiscal expansion, financed mainly by domestic borrowing, led to significant increase in money supply, a three-digit inflation rate, and unexpected currency rise. To address rising fiscal instability and destabilization, an economic reform program was developed in 1997 and has since been more seriously implemented. The program includes reinforcing and reorienting monetary policy to cut inflation rates, eliminating most credit control, and introducing new monetary control tools. In 2001, the program initiated an economic recovery process leading to unification of exchange rate and relative stability, declining inflation and doubling real output growth. The budget deficit declined from 3.8% of GDP in 1996 to 0.7% in 1998 due to government spending cuts. Annual inflation fell to 8% by 2000 when two instruments absorbed excess market liquidity generated in the high inflation era, GMC and CMC. Moreover, when students began exporting oil in 1998, the payment balance restriction decreased significantly, transforming an annual petroleum bill of 300 million into revenue sources that would earn over 3.7 billion a year. Sudan Economic Foundation improved overall with real GDP growth of 4.7% in 1990 to 2000 compared to 1.2% in 1985 to 1990. Indeed, with an average growth rate of 6.5%, Sudanese GDP has been among the highest in developing countries over the past 6 years. But Sudan still faces serious economic problems. The foreign department is still at 24 billion, a harsh figure for Sudan with a 9 million GDP. Moreover, armed conflict in Darfur and East Sudan means military spending remain high at the end of the South Civil War. Adequate infrastructure and limited funding sources prevent Sudan economy from developing. Demand deposits are much higher in Sudan, and saving deposits are still relatively small. This is a result of Sudan's cash-based economy, where individuals prefer easy access to their fund. Investors also face a diminished banking sector, unprepared to provide basic deposit options. The poor financial situation and inflation result directly from investors investing heavily in real estate and other real assets. Banks also use property investment, but they stopped it in 1995.
Inflation can be defined as a continuous rise in the overall price level of goods and service in the economy of the country. Inflation can reduce the purchasing power of buyer, but inflation also indicated that if there is an increase of the cost of living, it will result in lower purchasing power. However, inflation does not mean that every product worth the advertised will increase dramatically. Something may remain valuable and different things may be fall. Inflation also serves to measure the overall impact of price change for certain product and service, and it also likely to represent a single value from the sudden rise in the product and service in the economy over a period of time. Because of inflation in Sudan, firstly is fall in exchange rate. The fall in exchange rate in the value outside the country currency will be worsened inflation, as the lower exchange rate will cause the import to become more expensive. In Sudan, the parallel decline in the market exchange rate has shown the imbalance in the fundamental foreign exchange rate and the trade system between the other countries. It is according to Al-Badawi 1994. It can be said that the high inflation during the time period is the cause and the effect of this process. High inflation can cause the official exchange rate set to be too higher, which expand to the parallel market size and the premium. When the time comes for the increase in premium to increase the demand for the money sharply due to rising costs to those domestic currency which feed the inflation. Hence, to indicate the extent of the parallel exchange market, Hussein 1986 stated that over 18% of import was supported from the resources from the black market. Thus, the increasing diversion evolved finance toward the black market, which a depreciation exchange rate implies the enlarged price of import within the domestic economy. The second cause of inflation in Sudan is monetary inflation. Monetary inflation is sometimes referred to as a printing more money by the government, which is why the actual mechanism is a little more complicated than just pumping up the printing presses, and the results are basically the same. The currency losses its buying power as the supply of money rise and the value of goods and service increase. Monetary factor reveal that excesses that direct money issuing that and might be one among the most causes of inflation in Sudan. It is according to the idea that money of the most causes of inflation is to extend the money provided. The main reason for inflation in Sudan is the increase in the high money supply, which is the main cause of deficit financing. In addition, the Sudan's country found that the most important cause of the inflation in Sudan was due to the budget deficit, which means borrowing from the banking system, where the country had to close to the loan deficit from the banking system. That's the effect of inflation in Sudan. Effect of inflation will affect the economy of the country in the various methods, which is in negative or positive effect. The effect of inflation on growth and the productivity has been one of the major issues in Sudan. The first effect of inflation in Sudan is the fiscal deficits of monetary that will increase. The increased supply of money has a beneficial and direct impact on inflation, but after the separation of South Sudan in 2011, Sudan's economy collapsed during the losses of 75% of Sudan oil revenue. The monetization of the fiscal deficit result in strong inflationary pressure and high inflation rate. aggregated demand quantitative regulation, which is result in overly higher reserve requirement on the part of commercial bank and fail to sustain adequate the credit management without control of excess money in the economy. This will make Sudan have the problem with the economy, which is economy in Sudan will be fall. Next, the second effect of inflation in Sudan is reduce the real value of the tax burden. Sudan has also their own tax on their country. A large number of African countries, including Sudan, has charged the different tax rates for various types of property available. Prices are usually determined annually, but in some tax conditions will be set by the central government and municipal by law to be determined or unspecified period until static fixed rate for the year to come. For example, the rate difference just such as the tax rate for the residential real estate is much lower than price of commercial, industrial, and the government property. Thus, because of the inflation, the value of tax will be decreased from the real value. The country of Sudan will suffer huge losses if taxes are be lowered. It will cause the country economy to be affected and the plummeting due to the problem of the value of tax burden will be decreased.
What is unemployment? Unemployment is a skilled individuals who wants to work and find a job but still incapable of getting a job. Economic problems arise when some labor forces willing to work and do not get a job. Unemployment is one of the most common issues facing either developed and poorly developed countries. Economically active is a working person and an unemployed person. They are classified in labor by age from 15 to 64. Economically inactive are people who are not involved in labor force matters such as the military, housewife, full-time students, retirees, and many more. The amount of labor force is used by various sectors of the economy to produce goods and services in a country. Losing a job also makes someone unemployed. The size of the labor force includes sex distribution, age, income, population size, population growth, and many more. However, many types of unemployment occur to all globally. Among them are classical, frictional, seasonal, structural, technological, and cyclical unemployment. This type of unemployment allows the government to address this matter more deeply to identify the factors that cause unemployment. Cyclical unemployment arises when there is a decline in aggregate spending. It is also called real wage unemployment. The reduction in aggregate expenditure will reduce production, which reduces labor consumption and leads to unemployment. Frictional unemployment is temporary unemployment. It happens when people enter the labor market to look for jobs or people leave their jobs. Seasonal unemployment occurs when certain products cannot be produced during certain season. Structural unemployment is unemployment that occurs when a country changes economic structure. It results from structural decline of industries unable to compete or adopt the changing demands and new products. Technological unemployment is unemployment that occurs when capital intensive is used in production. The replacement of labor with machinery causes technological unemployment. Seasonal unemployment in Sudan arose when weather determined employed more Sudanese workers in agriculture sectors characterized by the existence of seasonal employment in agriculture. Also, Sudan has a hot and dry climate the year. This has led to the geographical movements to the topography of Sudan. Besides that, the conflict between the northern and southern regions caused unemployed refugees due to the migration of people migrating from north to south. Currently, Sudan has penetrated the information technology market, especially in the ICT sector, to facilitate daily management and facilities. This has led to the relocation and replacement of workers and has reduced job opportunities. The use of this technology has boosted business in banks in 2004. However, banking through technology has caused many to be unemployed due to the reduced labor consumption. Effect of unemployment. Most of the unemployment has a negative impact on the country of Sudan. Unemployment is one reason why some individuals are involved in shop robbery criminal activities, including taking the easy way to earn money in the fastest way. One of the effects is unemployment on university graduates. Most Sudanese university students are non-skilled scope graduates. However, they are graduates who focus on theoretical concepts. Graduates may feel less motivated, less self-esteem, and not appreciated to continue living more successfully in the future. Many Sudanese have also moved to other countries due to the collapsing economy. Economic instability can cause because the value of their country's currency has little value and is declining. The poverty rate of the population is also very high. According to Understanding the Africa Development Bank from 2014, next is reported that rural areas are significantly higher than urban areas. The total population of Sudan is varying because the rural population has no fixed income source due to unemployment having different income gaps. The labor force from rural areas is more than urban due to the shape of Sudan's geographical structure, especially in plantation and agriculture. This unemployment stems from those who do not get an adequate education. There are many gaps between education, skills, and work.
Okay, next, I will suggest to direct control remedy. There are a number of instruments in Sudan that its function is controlling an inflation containing with monetary policy, which is the higher of interest rate decrease the demand of economy, resulting in lower economic growth and decreased inflation. Besides that, fiscal policy, spending, demand and inflationary pressure could be reduced by a higher income tax rate. If we look through fiscal policy side, government of Sudan can raise tax like income tax and slash budget. This improves the fiscal situation of government and helps minimize the demand of economy. Fiscal policy should be aimed at restoring the sustainability of debt as well as domestic and external stability. Fiscal consolidation should be followed over the medium term in order to achieve a surplus within a few years, thus reducing debt ratios, removing the need for domestic funding both to curb inflation and to avoid crowding out loans from the private sector, and to restore reserve. There is a need to improve the governance system in South Sudan. Besides inflation, unemployment also has been the main topic about Sudan's issue. Because of that, Sudan has found another way to deal with unemployment. There are two major methods in reducing unemployment. First, the demand-side policies. Its function is reducing demand deficit of unemployment. Second, supply-side policies to reduce structural unemployment. A quick list of unemployment reduction policies is that they can cut interest rate through monetary policy to increase aggregate demand, while they can cut taxes to boost aggregate demand through fiscal policy. The expansionary of fiscal policies need to be followed by government of Sudan, including lowering the tax and increasing the expenditure of government. Tax that lower can raise disposable income and thus tend to increase the consumption. leading to higher and aggregate demand. If companies produce more, employees' demand will increase, thus lower the demand deficient of an unemployment. In fact, companies that bankrupt with high demand of aggregate will decreases, and economy will grow solidly, ensure people to lose their job. In conclusion, the study analysed inflation, unemployment and economic performance in Sudan from a descriptive and theoretical point of view. After reviewing the results obtained, the data were collected from different sources, showing that Sudan's economic output was influenced by inflation rates and has a worse period in which the inflation rate has a negative effect on economic performance. In particular, in a current context of an economic and globalization transparency, Sudan needs to provide a qualified workforce with the new technological skill, extend and promote an education that is needed for growth, build up an infrastructure that more sophisticated, business transaction with low cost, national treatments for secure and foreign investors, and transparent police forces. Government spending should aim at areas that it can increase an ability of exertive of the economy to sustain a positive impact of inflation in reducing an unemployment rates. Lastly, a government of Sudan should always strive to provide a policy package that more comprehensive, not only to build up the jobs level by implementing a job development programs such as a recruitment plan for graduates, but also to generate maximum productivity from working people. Sudan, for macroeconomic stability, needs to narrow its fiscal deficit. It seems that the widening fiscal deficit is largely being funded by domestic banking sources. This has made inflation worse, posing a threat to macroeconomic stability. Thank you.